The evening light filters through my bedroom window, casting a somber hue upon the photograph from my first communion that I am rearranging. Today I turn 72, and it seems as if all those 72 years were spent just so I could gather enough courage for this moment. My name is Grace M. Peterson, and this is my confession. I invite you, whoever you are, to sit here with me amidst the sound of the drizzling rain outside. They say rain is a blessing, but mine came only after a tempest that ravaged my life for years. This is not merely a story being retold. It is the story of deep scars on the soul, of a faith exploited to sow terror, and of a life that felt as though it had been stolen. Keep an open heart, because the story I am about to tell may bring you pain just as it has tormented me for over half a century. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, please leave a comment and subscribe, because some truths need to be spread even if they might shake your beliefs. Some stories, no matter how painful, must be told. I grew up in a humble clay house with a dirt floor and a thatched roof. We were poor in possessions, but rich in the affection of my mother, Mrs. Eleanor, a hard-working woman who washed clothes to support the four of us, me, 3 brothers, and me. Oh, my father, Mr. Anthony, was a man who claimed to be God-fearing. At least that's what he'd say when he slammed his fist on the table, demanding silence, or when he forcefully raised his belt. He who spares the rod hates his son. He would repeat like a dogma while we cowered in fear. My mother would bow her head, submissive as a frightened bird. God is watching everything, she would whisper to us when he went to drink at Sunnis Tavern. In our town, the church was very important. Father Joseph was almost a saint to everyone. His words were law. He was a serious man with a gaze that seemed to see all the sins hidden deep within one's soul. I was 19 when everything changed. I had just met John, the pharmacist. Son, a handsome boy with a charming smile who played the guitar at the town festivals. When he looked at me, I felt a pleasant warmth. A sin perhaps, but a sin so sweet it was impossible to resist. One night at a summer church picnic, John asked me to dance. Naively, I accepted. We danced closely, smelling each other's perfume, his hands on my waist. That was all, I swear to God, just a dance. But it was enough for Tony, the priest's nephew, to see us and spread the gossip that I was throwing myself at the boy. The rumor spread like wildfire. When I got home, my father was already waiting for me, his eyes full of rage. "You've dishonored the family," he shouted while my mother cried in silence. Now there's only one way to restore our honor. The next day, Father Joseph came to our house personally. He sat at the kitchen table accepting the coffee my mother offered with trembling hands. "Grace has a calling," he declared with divine grace. "God is calling her." I didn't understand anything. A calling? What calling? I just wanted to be a teacher, get married, have children. I wanted to feel that warmth John gave me again. There is a convent in St. Jude's Abbey in rural Montana. The Sisters of Divine Providence will receive Grace there. There she will find God's path and purify her soul. My father accepted immediately. My mother cried silently but said nothing. Who was she to contradict the divine will? Incomprehensible to my 19-year-old self, which contrasted with my own insignificance, a simple girl from the countryside. "Pack your things." My father's order was laconic, definitive, and it echoed in my mind long after he'd spoken. "You're leaving next week." That dark night, I cried until I was exhausted. I hugged Rosie, my rag doll, a gift from my mother since my childhood, tightly. The idea of leaving terrified me, abandoning my dreams and my town to become a nun. It was Aunt Clara, the neighborhood midwife and herbalist, knowledgeable about herbs and stars, who comforted me. "My child," she said with the wisdom of years. "Sometimes we have to follow a river we didn't choose to reach the sea that belongs to us. Keep that in your heart." The evening before my painful departure, I secretly met with John in our hiding spot behind the church. He took my hands, his eyes tearful. "I'll wait for you, Grace, no matter how long it takes." How much innocence in those words. Our youth believed in the simplicity of the world where desire was enough to make dreams come true. The journey was long and exhausting. 3 days in a pickup truck, shaking over dirt roads, followed by 2 days on a noisy train. I had never left Promise Creek. Every new landscape was new and frightening. I carried with me only a small bundle of simple clothes, the miraculous medal, a gift from my mother, and a wooden rosary, a legacy from my grandmother. When I arrived at St. Jude's Abbey, my soul was already shrunken with fear. The city was bigger than mine, the Yellowstone River more imposing than the Tennessee, and the convento, the convent, seemed like an impregnable fortress with its high walls and narrow windows. Sister Angelica received me at the door, a tall, thin woman with a long face and skin as pale as paper. She appeared to be in her 50s, but the weight of life had aged her. She was the Mother's Superior, the highest authority in that place. "Welcome to the house of God," she said without a smile. "Here you will learn discipline, obedience, and fear of the Lord." That first day, they took me to a small room where my hair, once long and black, which John had liked so much, was cut to the scalp. The locks fell to the floor like dry autumn leaves. Then they took my clothes, bathed me in cold water, and dressed me in a rough, itchy habit. "From today," they announced, "you are no longer Grace from Promise Creek. You are Sister Mary of Divine Obedience." That dark night, lying on a hard mattress in a cold, dark cell, I cried silently, afraid they would hear me. I hugged my aching body and tried to remember the warmth of my home, the smell of my mother's homemade bread, John's smile. I fought not to forget who I really was. The days in the convent repeated in a monotonous routine, like beads on an infinite rosary. We woke at 4 in the morning to the clang of the bell, prayed on our knees on the icy floor for an hour, then cleaned the convent in absolute silence. "A closed mouth catches no flies," Sister Angelica would repeat whenever someone dared to whisper. Breakfast consisted of a piece of stale bread and a glass of watered-down milk. More prayers followed. Work in the garden, catechism classes, sewing, always in silence, always with our heads bowed. At night, more prayers, and finally rest, hungry and cold. There were 27 other novices in the convent. Girls like me, with empty gazes, resigned with hesitant and trembling hands. Some, as young as 15 or 16, hid silenced histories. The past was a forbidden territory, sealed under constant threat. "The outside world is dead to you." The words of the burly Father Anselm resonated. A man with small eyes who came to the convent every week to hear our confessions. It was in the 3rd week of confinement that I met Rose. I was assigned to laundry duty with her, and amidst the steam and the scent of harsh soap, her gaze radiated an unusual liveless, a sharp attention, as if her mind were always busy with thoughts others didn't understand. Once, while I was cleaning the hallway, She passed by me and discreetly dropped a small piece of paper. "Be careful what you say in confession," the message read, written in a shaky hand. I was very surprised. Why such caution? Isn't confession supposed to be a sacred act, a ritual to purify the soul? Slowly, I began to understand what Rose meant. In my next confession, I told Father Anselm how much I missed my family. The next day, I was called to the Mother Superior's office. To my surprise, she knew everything I had said in confession. "Missing your family is the work of the devil," she declared, raising a wooden ruler. "We are going to eradicate this evil from your being." Obediently, I extended my hands as the other novices did. 10 painful strikes on each palm. I bit my lips hard, trying not to scream. "Give thanks for this correction," the mother ordered. "It is for the good of your soul." With a trembling voice and tears in my eyes, I replied, "Thank you, Mother." It was in that moment that I realized this place they called the house of God was actually a prison. A prison disguised as sanctity. And I was a prisoner, having done nothing wrong, serving a sentence for being young, for having danced with a boy, for having dreams. At night, lying in my cell, I would hear the muffled sobs in the pillows. I was not the only one suffering. All of us there shared the same pain, the same destiny imposed against our will by fathers, priests, or a false calling that none of us truly felt. Rose began to seek me out in secret. We would meet quickly in hiding, almost always when we were cleaning the chapel. She had been in the convent for 3 years. She came from a small town in the Appalachians, Kentucky. Her father sent her there when he discovered she wanted to study medicine. "This place is not of God's grace," she would whisper. "I've seen terrible things." That day, we were interrupted. Sister Agnes caught us talking and we were punished. We spent 2 hours kneeling on kernels of corn, praying the rosary non-stop. Almost a month after that punishment, on a stormy night, I saw something I will never forget. I couldn't sleep because of the thunder. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway, doors opening carefully. I peeked through the crack in my door and saw Father Anselm enter the cell of a novice named Teresa. Behind him, Sister Agnes, holding a candle, watched the hallway. The next morning, Teresa didn't come to prayers. I asked Sister Carmen, the oldest of the nuns, what had happened to her. But she avoided my gaze and told me in a low voice, "Some trials are harder than others. Pray for her." Rose confirmed my suspicions. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened. There was a system of silence and complicity that protected the abusers and punished the victims. "If we speak, no one will believe us," Rose explained. "We are women. We are novices. They are God's representatives on earth." I felt a great anguish, a rage I had never felt before. Rage against my father who sent me to that hell, against the church in my town under the command of the priest, a dark place that imprisoned women, subjecting them to abuse in the name of a twisted faith. One night, hidden in the pantry, I asked Rose, "How are we going to escape from here?" "I don't know how yet," she answered with a determined look. "But we'll figure it out. Trust me." The months passed very slowly in that oppressive environment. I learned to survive. I bowed my head, obeyed without question, prayed aloud, and confessed invented sins that harmed no one. But inside, the flame of the grace I once was, still burned. The girl from Promise Creek, who wanted to be a teacher, who loved the beauty of the river, and who danced freely with John. One night, while helping in the kitchen, I overheard a conversation between Sister Agnes and Sister Angelica. They were talking about an upcoming inspection with the arrival of important bishops from Helena the following week. "We have to hide the problems." Sister Angelica was saying Teresa still has visible marks and Lucy refuses to eat. The cruel solution they proposed was to lock them in the basement until the bishop's visit was over. The basement. I had never heard of a basement in that convent. When I told Rose, her eyes lit up with hope. She had already heard rumors about the basement. It was said to be under the chapel and was used to lock up the young women who tried to escape or who were unwell after what the priest did to them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about Teresa, Lucy, and the other girls locked in the darkness of the basement. I thought about John, wondering if he still remembered me. I thought about my mother, imagining if she too cried every night as I did. "We will find a solution," Rose promised, squeezing my hand tightly the next day. "God helps those who help themselves. And I don't mean their God, but the true God who loves and frees, not the one who imprisons and punishes." The eve of the bishop's arrival, the convent was in chaos. Everyone was cleaning and polishing every corner. Mother Angelica, more nervous than a cat on a hot tin roof, was shouting orders at everyone. It was in that chaos that Rose and I saw our opportunity. We were sent to clean the chapel where the bishops would hold Mass the next day. While the other novices arranged the pews and the altar, we pretended to be cleaning, but our eyes were searching for clues to the basement. "There," Rose whispered, pointing to a small, almost invisible door behind the confessional. "I've been watching that door for a while. I've never seen anyone go in or out of it in broad daylight." We waited for the right moment. When Sister Agnes went to get more wax and the other novices were cleaning the stained glass windows, we approached the door in silence. It was locked, of course, but Rose, cunning as ever, already had a hairpin hidden in the fold of her habit. "I learned this from my brother," she confided as she worked the hairpin in the lock. "He used it to open the pantry at home when we wanted to steal sweets." After a few minutes, that felt like an eternity. The door gave way with a faint click. Our hearts were pounding so hard we feared the sound would give away our audacity. Behind the door, a dark, damp stone staircase descended into what could only be the infamous basement. "Let's come back later," Rose pondered cautiously. That night, when the convent fell into the silence of sleep, we could barely touch our food, consumed by tension and expectation. Apprehension dominated me as I recited the evening prayers, a rosary of Hail Marys uttered without real thought, my mind absorbed in the possible consequences of our actions. "What if they catch us?" I murmured to Rose as we returned to our quarters. "The punishment will be severe. We can't remain idle," she countered, her gaze filled with determination. "We'll never get out of here, and those young women downstairs will continue to suffer." We waited until midnight when the convent was plunged into an almost palpable silence. Only the howling of the wind against the windows and the occasional muffled sob from a distant cell disturbed the quiet. Barefoot to avoid making noise, we left our rooms and met in the hallway. The darkness was dense, but Rose carried a small candle. We walked in slow steps, whispering sincere prayers, imploring for protection, not to the nuns or the priests, but to a divine force, if it still listened. We reached the chapel without incident. The moonlight filtering through the colorful stained glass windows cast dancing shapes on the floor. A tremor ran through me, a mixture of dread and cold. "Let's go," Rose said, taking my hand. Together, we headed to the small door. This time, the makeshift key wasn't necessary. The lock had been left open. A narrow spiral staircase was revealed. A strong smell of mold permeated the air, mixed with an indefinable odor. We descended cautiously, the flickering flame of the candle casting sinister shadows on the stone walls. The basement was larger than I had imagined, with a long corridor flanked by several wooden doors. It resembled a prison, not a convent. "Teresa, Lucy, is anyone there?" Rose called out in a low voice. A faint groan emanated from one of the cells. We ran to it. A small barred window allowed a glimpse inside. A tiny windowless cubicle with only a thin mattress on the floor. On it, a huddled young woman. It was Teresa, looking smaller and thinner than I remembered, with deep, dark circles under her eyes. "We've come to help," I declared. While Rose tried to open the door with the hairpin. "It's no use," Teresa replied, her voice barely audible. "They're taking us away early tomorrow before the bishops arrive. We'll be transferred to the convent in Billings until the visit is over." "Who else is here?" Rose inquired, examining the other cells. "Lucy is in the cell next door. And also Joanna, the one who tried to escape last month. She's been here longer. She doesn't talk anymore, only cries." It was a desolate scene. 3 young women imprisoned like animals, punished for not enduring the abuse or for daring to seek freedom. And the worst part was the certainty that this was just a fraction of a grim reality. How many others had suffered there before? How many had been sent to other convents, silenced forever? "We have to do something," I exclaimed with tears streaming down my face. "We can't leave them here." At that moment, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone was descending. Rose quickly blew out the candle and pulled me behind some wine barrels in the corner of the basement. It was Sister Agnes with a lamp, followed by Father Anselm. Motionless, hidden in the shadows, we trembled with fear. "The bishops arrive at 8, said the priest. "Make sure they are far from here by then, and try to improve their appearance." "I don't want any questions." "Yes, Father," replied the nun. The 2 of them went into a room at the end of the corridor, leaving the door slightly ajar, which allowed their conversation to be overheard. "The newcomer, Grace," the priest inquired about my behavior. I felt a chill hearing my name. Rose squeezed my hand firmly. "She still shows inner rebellion," replied Sister Agnes. "But she is in the process of learning. Rose, on the other hand, worries me. She seems to have the devil in her blood, always questioning with those defiant eyes. After the visit, I will take care of both of them," the priest concluded in a tone that sent shivers down my spine. "I have effective methods, even for the most resistant ones." You didn't need to be a genius to understand his intentions. Rose and I exchanged glances in the darkness with the same thought in mind. We needed to escape from there as quickly as possible. We waited for the 2 of them to leave, which seemed like an eternity. When silence finally returned, Rose relit the candle. "They will take you at 5 o'clock in the morning," I informed Teresa through the small window in the door. "And we'll be back tomorrow night?" she questioned with an exhausted voice. "Is it always like this?" Rose replied. "Not if you escape," she retorted. How if we're locked in here? And even if we manage to get out, where would we go? We have no money and we don't know anyone in the city. Rose remained silent for a moment, lost in thought. Then her face lit up with that determined smile I already knew. I have a plan, she announced. But we'll need help. We returned to our room before our absence was noted. Lying on my uncomfortable bed, I couldn't sleep. The images of the basement, of the imprisoned girls, the priest's voice talking about you very things swirled in my mind. The next morning, the bishops arrived promptly at 8 o'clock. They were 3 men dressed in purple cassoques with serious and imposing faces. The entire convent was lined up in the courtyard to receive them, all with heads bowed, hands clasped in prayer. Mother Angelica was smiling as I had never seen her before. Suddenly, she seemed like a saint, a welcoming and gentle woman. What a flawless performance! Our novices are examples of devotion, she claimed as she introduced us to the bishops. They live in prayer and work, following in the footsteps of Our Lady. I felt a strong urge to reveal the truth right there in front of everyone, but I knew no one would believe me. It would be my word against theirs. Throughout the day, the bishops toured the convent, visiting the chapel, the refectory, and even the garden. Obviously, the basement was not included in the tea.